Good morning. Welcome to the live in-person and live Zoom worship service of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Riverside. Our doors are open, and we will continue to live streaming and posting these services on our YouTube channel for our virtual attendees. I am Linda Van Voris, a member of the worship committee, and I will be your worship associate for today. We welcome you and all our online guests to join us this morning with an open mind and open heart, and with muted electronic devices. Thank you. We invite you to leave your worries and defenses at the door and trust that what happens in worship today is inspiring and powerful. Together, we affirm this day, and our being together can make each of us braver, more compassionate, and wiser as we begin a new day and a new week. Although our doors are open, the pandemic is not over. So while you're here, if you choose, please wear your masks and socially distance. We can speak in normal tones, but singing or chanting creates increased risk of airborne exposure. So we ask that you refrain from the time being. We invite those of you in the sanctuary to sit back and enjoy listening. For those of you at home, sing your hearts out. For our call to worship, you are welcome to read with me the mission statement of our church. Our mission is to foster a diverse religious community that celebrates life, affirms the individual, encourages spiritual growth and open thought, and works to advance social justice and environmental sustainability. This morning, we are pleased to welcome Dr. Tom Dolan, Executive Director of ICUC, Inland Congregations United for Change, a faith-based nonprofit community organization serving the Inland Empire. Tom Dolan says, I was born in Mason City, Iowa in 1955. I'm going to have you younger here, Tom. I have worked with immigrant communities since 1976. My work has included 13 years working with political refugee communities in Ecuador and Chile, and extensive experience with the immigrant communities in Mexico, Arizona, New York, and California. Since 1998, I have lived in San Bernardino. I am married to Cecilia Miranda, who is a Mexican and US citizen, and who has worked for many years as an advocate for her migrant community in the region. We have 4 children together. I graduated from the University of Notre Dame and San Diego State University in 2010. In the Inland Empire, I have worked to organize and train community organizers with youth, parents, immigrants, Black and Indigenous communities, and people of many faith traditions, as well as agnostics, atheists, and people of many backgrounds and beliefs. About the sermon, Dr. Dolan says, I will talk about my spiritual journey as a white Christian cisgender male from the US to a white faith questioning cisgender male from the US and other parts. I will highlight how my faith has evolved into relation to my life experiences, attempting to work for justice and systems change here and in Latin America. I will also emphasize the connection between community and political organizing and spirituality and religion. We will now light our remembrance candle for the Indigenous peoples. We have two lightings of sacred flames. The first is the occupied Indigenous peoples remembrance candle. The second is the lighting of our own chalice, the symbol of our faith. We walk upon the traditional territories of diverse and sovereign peoples, the original peoples of this land, who continue to cry out for justice and self-determination. This spot we occupy was first the sacred space of many groups of California Indians, including the Kahia, the Capano, and the Serrano. We, the Universalist Unitarian Church of Riverside, light this sacred flame as a steward of this sacred and holy place. We are blessed with a place, with a space and opportunity to strive to live out our common principles, to bring justice, equity, and compassion into our daily lives, to resist all that threaten the earth and her people, and to be a part of a community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. Let these thoughts carry us forth as we journey and worship together. Okay, Bill. Oh, you've already lit it. Good job. Chalice lighting. Today's reading of the chalice lighting is Open to Unexpected Answers by Julianne Lepp. We seek our place in the world and the answers to our heart's deep questions. As we seek, may our hearts be open to unexpected answers. May the light of our chalice remind us that this is a community of warmth, of wisdom, welcoming of multiple truths. Our opening hymn this morning is Fire of Commitment. For those in the sanctuary, please sit back and enjoy the hymn, but please do not sing along.
From the light of day's remembered burns a beacon bright and clear, guiding hands and hearts and spirits into faith set free from fear. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meet to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future finds fulfillment, and our future can begin.
We have a tradition at UUCR. We like to welcome those who are visitors or perhaps returning after some time away. But we know it can be uncomfortable to stand up and speak in front of others. And we won't ask you to do something we wouldn't do ourselves. So I'm going to choose some unsuspecting soul who has been here a while to tell us your name and how you first found out about your church. We ask that you hold the mic close to your face and speak into it directly and clearly so everyone can hear. Oh, my goodness. Grace? Yeah.
You blinked, that was all it took.
I hope this spot works.
Come on up.
Here? Hi, everyone. Ooh. Hi, everyone. My name is Grace. Good to see you all. I found this church, I think it was in October of 2018. Had been in Riverside for a while, and I was looking for some kind of spiritual experience. And I found this church and walked in, and I liked what I heard. So here I am.
Grace. That's how it's done. So if you are new here or new again, please stand or raise your hand and Bill will come around with a freshly sanitized mic.
Here we go. Step to the aisle, there's a couple of dead spots. Oh, he's good, all right.
All right, good morning, everyone. Kelvin Ward, and I work with, as well as Tom at ICUC. I born in Riverside, raised here, and glad to be here this morning. Thank you.
Welcome.
Welcome, glad to have you.
Anybody else? We have another brave soul. Thank you.
Howdy, folks. You might already know me. I'm Johnny Miller. I was also invited by Adam, but I'm in Inland Empire DF and Riverside, not bombs, and we partner with y'all, and stoked to be here today. Thank you.
Welcome.
Good morning. My name is Francisco Sola. I come here infrequently, every 2 years or so. I'm very pleased to come here to see a friend, Tom Dolan. We work together with the Ministry of Social Justice from the parish of Our Lady of Perpetual Help. Thank you.
Welcome. If there's someone online who would like to introduce yourself, please raise your hand and Adam will call on you. Okay, we'll continue on. For new guests, our visitor book in the parish hall, so please write in it so that we will know who you are and that you are here and we can inform you of upcoming events. For those online, the best way to get added to the mailing list is to email the church at admin@uuchurchofriverside.org. During the service, we will mention several websites, email addresses, and phone numbers. At the end of the service, we will leave a slide with all this information up, and it is available also on our website. Sharing joys and concerns is one of the most important rituals in our community, an opportunity to share milestones, losses, achievements, and experiences with one another. Now our doors are open again. On the first Sunday of each month, we can both hear from those in the sanctuary and read the contributions we have received. In front of the pulpit, There is a book where you can write your joys and concerns whenever you are here in the sanctuary. For those of you at home, you can send your joys and concerns throughout the month to uuchurchofriverside@gmail.org. Our next joys and concerns will be on August 1st. Announcements. Today is the third Sunday, and the Social Environmental Justice Committee will be meeting today at 12 p.m. And there is a bake sale in the parish hall today. See Paula for the bake sale goodies. Also, this next Saturday, the 24th, we're having our second drum circle. It is a full moon, so we are filing it full moon drum circle. It will again be at Pat Wonder's backyard, and everybody is welcome. We are not having a potluck this time. We're focusing on the drumming, but we will have snacks. So if you have some little treat that you really like, you're welcome to bring that. And we will be going from about 7 to 10 p.m. And you can see myself or Pat if you want more information, but please remember, you don't have to be a drummer. This is a community experience, and it's not a concert we're giving to anybody, so it doesn't matter who you are, and if you've never drummed before, you're still welcome. I do a little explanation in the beginning, but it's very short. Drumming is not difficult at all, which is one of the reasons that I chose it as a hobby. So, our hymn now is Spirit of Life. If you're in the sanctuary, I invite you to sit back, close your eyes, and listen. To support our beloved historical church. This can be accomplished in several ways. You may send your check to the church address, which will be shown. Please do not send cash. You may contribute using the QR code, which is on the church website, as well as a newsletter and the order of service. You may contribute, went past that. Stater Brothers Market and various script cards can give our church a rebate on their retail cards, which are available in the church each Sunday. If you're interested, please email the church office at admin@uuchurchofriverside.org. Sharing our treasure. Another way to help is when we make purchases through Amazon. Go to Amazon, there's no period here, Grace. We're making purchases through Amazon. Go to smileamazon.com. Be sure to have the smile in there and choose Universalist Unitarian Church as your territory. We receive 0.5% of your qualified purchases. And by using an Amazon script card, we receive the percentages from both. So first you buy the Amazon script card and we get 1%, and then you use it on Amazon and we get another %. Will the ushers please come forward? Please donate as the Spirit moves you by whatever method works best for you. Thank you for your generosity. And to those who give their time and talent, thank you for your generous care and attention. Our next hymn is From You I Receive. Please sit back and enjoy.
From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live.
Our meditation today is Someday by Margaret Williams Braxton. Once upon a time, I was. Actually, I'm going to ask you to sit back, relax, close your eyes. Should have done that first, but this is a meditation, so get comfortable. Once upon a time, I was. Now I am. Someday, I will become. Once there was, and now there is. Soon, there will be. And someday, there surely shall be. Once upon a time, we were, and now we are. And someday, hallelujah, we shall surely become. Amen, amen. Let's pause for a moment of silence. Ding. Now I would like to introduce Dr. Tom Dolan, our speaker on There and Back Again, Becoming Myself by Walking Along Others' Pathways. Dr. Dolan?
Good morning. My name is Tom Dolan. I was invited to speak here by my friend Adam, with whom I have shared many wonderful organizing moments and moments here in this church and in others here in Riverside, where we organize communities to take action for social justice. I've also been here for many years working with a friend, Bob Melch, who is a member here and very active with ICUC as well, and others before as well. So it's a privilege to be here, and I thank you for inviting me. When I was asked to give a talk, which I don't do hardly ever, I speak with small groups and I do trainings, but I don't do this. And I was asked to give a title to my talk. I didn't quite know what to think, and so I came up with There and Back Again, which is a favorite subtitle of my favorite childhood readings by J.R.R. Tolkien. There and Back Again was what the Hobbit Bilbo titled his journal. And as I thought about it, my faith journey and my journey through life really reminds me of Bilbo and that journey there and back again. I read his stories over and over again when I was a child. Growing up in a small, very segregated, everybody was the same kind of community, the fantasies of Tolkien really reached out to me of what he did, what Bilbo did in his adventures. He met many peoples and creatures very different from one another, and they all searched for justice and struggled against evil. And that was a compelling story that, in my childhood really had meaning to me. So I grew up in a small, white, middle class, working class, Midwestern town, Dubuque, Iowa. Until I was about 19, I thought it was an ideal place to grow up. Today, I think most people who live there still think the same. It's pretty quiet. It's very, very green, just covered with trees. I was there with my children just recently, and we would run across deer in the city because they live in all the wooded areas. For me, that was something of great beauty, and I thought, and it was my home. And people were very friendly, but there was something in me that yearned to know something different, for adventure. My stepdad, directed an orphanage, and it was there that I first got to meet people from different backgrounds. They were very different from my neighborhood children and from the kids I studied with in my Catholic grade school. My mom and dad also adopted kids and families all the time. Our house was, there was always people living with us from other places. We had a brother and sister from Cuba when I was very small. As a teenager, my best friend was from Brazil. We had an older couple from Guatemala that lived with us. And my dad brought in children during the summers from Chicago, from other big cities. They did not fit in. They were not like my white working class community. And I learned that, you know, there was a lot different out there for me to know. And I wanted to explore that. Something made me want to explore. So at 18, when I went to college, I moved to the University of Notre Dame. All of my friends were white middle class kids like myself. There were a few people of color at Notre Dame, mostly athletes, football players, basketball players. But I quickly tried to find ways to discover difference. I studied anthropology. I was drawn to the study of other cultures and people. And as a sophomore, I moved to Mexico City. And I studied in Mexico City. Even there, though, I really struggled to build relationships with Mexican students because the students, there were 13 of us from Notre Dame, we lived kind of in a segregated way. And so I moved out. I was living with 2 Notre Dame students and I moved in with a Mexican guy from Oaxaca. This helped me learn Spanish better, but it really wasn't enough. I wanted to know more. I wanted to be more a part of different people. So when I returned, I signed up for a program I heard about to move to Peru. It was not a study program. It was run by the Religious Order of Holy Cross. And I had to go through 1 year of training to go. They sent 2 of us. Actually, they sent 4. In the first week, they kicked 2 out and sent them back to the United States. 2 of us lived there in Chimbote, Peru, in one of the poorest cities in Latin America. At that time, it was a fishing village. I lived there from 1976 until 1977. My experiences there deeply changed my understanding of the world, of myself, and what I wanted to do with my life. The most profound impact on me was made by living in poverty. I lived on $50 a month. I had no other money. That was it. I had to pay for everything. Rent, food, transportation. Live like the people with $50 a month. Nobody gave me anything. I lived in a little room in what they called a conventillo. It was a long series of rooms that individuals and families rented to live in. We had no water, no electricity, and no sewage. That's how people lived. The room was infested, the whole area of all those rooms was infested with roaches. I had to sleep under a sheet pulled up over my head because they would run on my body. There was no bathroom. Out next to my door, next to my room, was the outhouse. It was a hole. And next to that was a well filled with seawater because we were on the coast. People would go into the outhouse next to my bedroom, do their needs, take a bucket, throw it down into the well, pull up some seawater and pour that in to flush the toilet. This was very impactful on me to see how people lived and to share that experience. I, like other people, because of that, I would want to go out to the street and do my necessity in the street like other people did. But what would happen is there were military tanks and trucks that would drive through the street, shooting off machine guns, because the country was under a military, it lived in what they called a state of siege, under a curfew that started at 8 p.m. Everybody in, the shots were warning shots, but it was scary. There were Many experiences living in poverty that changed me, living with so little and sharing with others who had even less, made me realize that I didn't want to chase after material things. And I needed to live with the poor, to feel honest with myself. I felt hypocritical, thinking that I would somehow justify living well when I knew wealth was the product of other people's exploitation. Another profound impact on me was the result of political education and study of the history of Peru and the rest of Latin America. I read all the time. At night, I read by candlelight. My experience with the Peruvian people also changed how I understand myself and others. During the days, I volunteered at a special education school run by a Jesuit priest, where I helped in a classroom for deaf children. I learned more by just spending time with the children and their families than I did even reading. 2 Catholic priests met with me every week. One taught me literature, political analysis. I read the newspaper every day. I read magazines. We studied political analysis. The other one taught me mostly literature. We read everything that I read, a lot that had been written by Peruvian authors. They practiced what we call theology of liberation. They had both been expelled from Chile the year before by the military government, and they worked with the poorest of the poor, and they lived in extreme poverty themselves. They were unlike anyone I had ever met, and their ministry had led them to be arrested, tortured, and expelled from Chile. Their work with the people was inspiring. At the school where I worked, the staff was almost entirely members of left-wing political parties, and the teachers' union, like all other unions, was illegal. They met secretly in their homes, and they disguised their meetings as parties. It took me months to gain their trust. I so much wanted to be part. And the only way I gained their trust was by working with the children and their families, and people saw that I cared. And as you can see, I was emotional. I've always been this way. I can't hide my feelings. They could read those. They knew I cared. So eventually I was invited to participate in the teachers' meetings. They were planning a general strike to protest against the military regime and to demand elections. I was asked to help run a mimeograph to print flyers and little magazines. I volunteered with anything I could. I loved learning and making relationships with both the teachers and students. As the months passed, I learned more. I learned that the US government was supporting this military government in Peru, like it did all over Latin America. Almost every country in Latin America at that time lived under the heel of the military. People were pulled out of their houses and murdered in the streets. People were pushed out of helicopters into the sea. Thousands and thousands of people were murdered by our government with that support. And it still continues today. It still continues today. Democratic government, Republican government, they all support it. I learned that a handful of US multinationals profited from starvation wages and the brutal repression of the Peruvian people. Corporations that controlled the whole economy, the mining, the fishing. These were American corporations. There were a few individuals who were becoming billionaires with whole countries being repressed. I also learned about the churches. I was active. Churches were divided. Many supported the dictatorship and the brutal repression while preaching about salvation after death. Some religious people took great risks to support people's organizing. Many Peruvian people put great faith in traditional churches, the Catholic Church, with all of its traditions its incense, its masses, that was attractive to many people because it gave them a community to be part of in a time when without community, there was no survival. It connected them to their ancestors' history of faith and community building. But also many people organized resistance from within their church. In the church that I attended with the two priests who were my mentors, we did all sorts of things. In the clinic, we had a little secret, that's where the mimeograph was. It was a clinic, but afterwards, we were printing things and distributing to the community for them to understand. I worked with a 15-year-old poet who lived next door, and we published his poetry about pain and about his people. Some of the people in churches were militants of radical political movements that demanded deep revolutionary change. As the year passed, I participated in 2 general strikes. There was nothing heroic or risky about what I did. I just stayed away from work for a day and showed up the next day. I was a follower, not a leader, but I followed my emerging consciousness and I did what I thought was right. After the second strike, I was called in to the Jesuit priest who ran the school I volunteered at, and I was fired. Not all Jesuits are liberals. Even though I was a volunteer, I was fired. And I received notice from the government that I had to present myself at the Ministry of Defense in Lima. I was scared beyond wits. I went to my mentors. One of the priests traveled to Lima with me. And we went there, and I was informed that I had a week to leave the country. I left after 10 years of experiential learning. And one of the things I learned is that's the way I wanted to continue learning, through experience with other people. I had learned what a preferential option for the poor was. It meant becoming poor. It meant sharing poverty. It wasn't some thing for comfortable people. And I learned this not from reading theology or Catholic social teachings. I learned it from my experience and that of many others who shared their lives and their learnings with me. During that year, I changed forever. I didn't care about a career. I saw myself as seeking to become a skilled organizer and sought to build knowledge and skills to contribute to the dramatic, revolutionary changes that would be needed to overcome the systems of oppression that create poverty, racism, and oppression of people across the world. I was as idealist as you can come, but that was my commitment. When I returned to the US, I went through a period where I couldn't even go back home. On my way home to Iowa, I met an African-American woman about my age in the airport of Chicago. We started a conversation. I told her I was from Dubuque. She said she lived there. I had never met a Black person in Dubuque. I commented how I thought it was such a great place to grow up. And she replied, it was not like that at all for her. She experienced blatant, everyday racism throughout her experience living there. Her perspective was completely different. When I started to realize how she felt because of my experiences in Peru, I knew how she felt. I couldn't support the ignorance and complicity of people, including my family, in other suffering and exploitation, and people's absolute ignorance about the country they live in and how it impacts other people. I left. I went back to Notre Dame, to South Bend in the summer, and I moved in with some Chilean refugees, other radical Catholics who had been expelled from Chile, and Mexican Americans who were organizing in the community with the Chicano community and the migrant farm workers. My relationship with religion changed completely. Before, my faith was meaningless. I really didn't belong to a church or feel like I cared. As a child, I was an altar boy. I attended Catholic schools for 18 years. From first grade through 12th grade, 4 years of Notre Dame, and while in Chile, I did a master's in sociology at the Catholic University. I was highly educated in Catholicism, but I didn't have time for religion or church. After my experience in Peru and with the exile community, I began to build a different relationship with religion and with faith communities. I started to know more congregations and individuals who worked for social justice, who had very critical understandings of our society. And I gained more respect for people of simple faith, who find community and hope in their participation in a religious community, and who don't have to analyze everything, and who find important meaning in their congregation and their faith. But I was mostly attracted to organizing and to efforts to build revolutionary social and political change. People of faith were also often present in these movements, but so were many others. So for the next 15 years, I worked with a Chilean political organization. I became a member of a Chilean political organization, not to be named. I was not paid. I did all this in my free time after my regular jobs. And I built skills as an organizer. And I began to become employed full-time as an organizer. But my heart was in political change in Latin America. I lived and worked with Latin Americans for the next 15 years, 3 in New York, 6 in Ecuador, 6 in Ecuador and 6 in Chile. During those years, I didn't belong to a congregation. I had no formal faith life. I worked very closely. I worked for the Quakers. They were my employer in Chile. I worked with Lutherans, Presbyterians. I married a Presbyterian, pastor, Catholics, and many atheists. My faith in a community dedicated to justice and to communion with the poor was greatly strengthened. At the same time, my understanding of communities, our society, religion, and churches also deepened. I've learned through those experiences that communities will give everything, their lives and their families' lives, to the well-beings of others and to the cause of love and justice. But others will work just as hard to protect their privilege and to sustain systems of oppression that protect their interests. Often, they use religion to justify this. There are whole churches built around this. And some religious groups have long histories of protecting this order of society and their own privileges. There are church communities that protect the status quo, both consciously and unconsciously. And there are millions of people who find comfort in congregations and church-based belief systems that give their lives and their deaths meaning. What has sustained me during my adult life has been those values that I learned from my family and from people I have lived and worked with here and elsewhere. During my years living in Latin America, I was a small part of a huge organizing effort to overthrow the military government in Chile. I worked at that for 15 years. My community was the resistance movement, the popular education movement in poor neighborhoods, and the political and community leadership that I built relationships with. I lived through the people's protests and organizing that resulted in the overthrow of the military dictatorship that lasted for 17 years. My last years there, I participated in demonstrations and protests with millions of people walking through the streets of Santiago demanding democracy. And I saw it happen. And I saw the military be overthrown and people begin to build a new community. Many of these people were people who sat in congregations and churches like this. and dedicated everything and took huge risks, and many died along the way. Many thousands and thousands of people died for that dream. So I ended in Chile, and I realized there was something missing. I needed a family. I needed to lay down roots. So I moved back. And I ended up here in San Bernardino with a Lutheran pastor who had worked very much in Chile and I had known for years. And he and I helped create a mission in San Bernardino called Central City Lutheran Mission. It was an old Lutheran church with no Lutherans that we took over. We took out these pews, and we brought in homeless folks. We were housing about 60 homeless men. We had an after-school program that was thriving and radical. I contributed to that with my experience. We questioned everything, and we taught people to question and organize. It was beautiful. It was a great experience. We created a health clinic there together with nurses from Cal State San Bernardino that went out into the community, provided healthcare, and created healthcare promoters. We did a lot of work. After a few years there, I moved to work with ICUC, Inland Congregations United for Change. I was hired as the first organizer in San Bernardino after years of rebuilding. So I was working by myself in San Bernardino, and I went into congregations and started knocking on doors and going to services, and meeting people afterwards and getting to know them and asking them, what do you care about? What ticks you off? What makes you love? What do you love? And I started to build little ministries of people who wanted to organize. And I had mentors that helped me to teach organizing. We taught those people to get involved with their school board, their city council, their state assembly. And we started taking on those many issues here in Riverside, in San Bernardino, in Ontario, in the Coachella Valley. Racism, unfair pay, poor housing, homelessness, a lack of food, all of those small groups, 6, 8, 12 people, building relationships with city council members, going to meetings, pushing for change, and sometimes getting it. I've gone deeply into communities. I know and have built relationships because of the privilege of doing this work with hundreds of families, with children, with young people, with adults. We've gotten into huge fights for justice, and we've built strong organizations. 3 or 4 organizations that I've helped to build: the Inland Coalition for Immigrant Justice, IE United, Inland Empowerment, ICUC, and others. It's been such a journey. And all of these experiences, what I've learned is that I'm still that privileged kid from Iowa, there and back again. I'm still me. I still wear this skin. I still wear this privilege. I'm highly educated. I'm white. I'm a US citizen. I speak English. Need I go on? I'm cisgender. All of these things that give me privilege. That has not changed a bit. I'm often clueless about my own privilege. I always have to be reminded. It seems no amount of experience can completely change who I am. When others meet me for the first time, I'm that gringo that's in the Chicago airport talking with an African-American woman for the first time. I'm that guy that just got off the plane in Lima or Santiago. They don't know me, and sometimes I don't. I still carry myself with me. And being a white male from the United States, just being from the United States, is incredible privilege. And so I learned that I still have a lot to change. I've now lived here in this area longer than any place in my whole life. I've been here for 22 years. I married my wife, Cecilia, 16 years ago. We have 4 children together. Our oldest, my wife's son, who I adopted when he was 6, was born and raised in Mexico. He's now a community organizer in Bakersfield. He went to Pacific High School in San Bernardino, the worst high school in the city. He graduated from UCR, and now he's leading organizing with immigrant communities in Washington, D.C. and Bakersfield, and he's staying with us for a while during COVID, and he's just like me. He's always talking with other people and organizing things. I'm happy. My daughter is 15. She's been a youth organizer for 3 years. She organizes groups of kids in her high school, Pacific High School. They're taking on a campaign to get more mental health services for kids in the whole district, and they're succeeding. They're building a mental health center at her school because of the work and organizing of young people. We have 2 smaller children, 13 and 10. They're the coolest kids around. We live in a small, old house, older than me, in San Bernardino, and we work for justice as organizers. My wife, myself, Adam, Kelvin, my community. My trip to there and back again has brought me here. I've taken huge risks. I have many stories of there and back again. I've learned many things, but mostly that I know very little. My degrees matter nothing. My job titles matter nothing. The relationships I've built with others, especially with people who experience oppression, indignation, pain, and suffering, these are the most important things in my life. My family is huge. My congregation is many. But my ignorance is still much vaster than my knowledge. God is real. I've struggled with this. And I've come to believe that there is a God, which is a power of love and healing in the universe that is everywhere, and that is there for all of us. My work now is to support others' journeys and to hold a light for so many people who are doing God's work in our communities. Organizing the poor and exploited, fighting for justice, giving shelter and healing to those in need, learning to be more humble and more helpful, getting out of my own way. I now feel comfortable stretching my hand out to others, to the stranger, like my dad that taught me this at the orphanage, and my mentors who taught me along the way. As a child, I would feel so embarrassed when my dad would walk up to strangers and just start a conversation. That's how he was. Now I embarrass the hell out of my kids. I reach out my hand and I listen. As a community organizer and now the director of one of the largest organizing groups in the state, I'm constantly challenged to become aware of how my actions and my beliefs, conscious and unconscious, work to maintain systems of exclusion and oppression, or work to help build communities that include and embrace those who are ignored, hated, excluded, oppressed, incarcerated, and exterminated. As a person of faith, I am reminded that I am connected to a community that has struggled with these issues for millennia. My faith makes me part of those 1,000-year-long struggles and part of all the disasters of all of those churches. We can build and exercise power to support the oppressed, and we can participate in the liberation of ourselves and others, or we can find solace and comfort when we are weary in our congregations, in our communities. We can have a safe place to agitate each other, like maybe I'm doing a little today. To get up and go out the next day to continue becoming more loving and more understanding of others. And we can celebrate in joy and hope that our lives have meaning and that we can overcome all that makes our world mean and ignorant. I appreciate the opportunity to share with you some of my life learnings, and I thank you again for everything you do here in your congregation and your church to support the community in Riverside and to work for justice. Thank you.
Our closing hymn is We'll Build a Land. Those in the sanctuary, sit back, close your eyes, and listen quietly.
We'll build a land where we
Our benediction today is Go Forth in Simplicity by Reverend Samuel A. Trumbore. Go forth in simplicity. Find and walk the path that leads to compassion and wisdom, that leads to happiness, peace, and ease. Welcome the stranger and open your heart to a world in need of healing. Be courageous before the forces of hate. Hold and embody a vision of the common good that serves the needs of all people. Namaste, amen, and blessed be. Thank you, Dr. Tom Dolan, for sharing your valuable time and insights with us this morning, and of your incredible journey. It is sincerely appreciated, and we look forward to seeing you again. We're going to have about 10 to 15 minutes Q&A with Dr. Dolan following the service. Please be aware this will be included on the video that is posted. This is a transition for us, so please work with us while we figure out the best way to do this. Dr. Dolan, could we have you come back up to the pulpit? And we'll take some questions and answers. Bill, will you pass the mic? So anyone with any questions for Dr. Dolan?
Oh.
More of a philosophical question. You know the voting process, and you believe in the voting process. When we grew up with I realized that many of these people who were fighting the guerrillas, you know, eventually became power by in Salvador, all that kind of stuff. But I always saw, is there any for the other side, the being oppressed, to take arms and do revolutionary work? You know, this philosophical seems like struggle because you believe in no violence. That's basically the question. What is your opinion on that?
I think I heard it all. I'll take a shot. There are different moments in communities and countries' political lives where different types of organizing and action are needed. It's hard for us living here to understand what it's like in a country where your neighbor can be pulled out of their house in the middle of the night and killed. In those types of situations where there is no voting, there are no elected officials. In Chile, there was no city council or anything. That was all the military, all the military. In those situations, there's a lot of organizing that needs to be done with the community to push for the restoration of their rights and of a democratic system. But there's also moments where people need to defend their community. And so in many places around the world, there have been armed revolutionary movements. There was one here, if I'm not mistaken, in the United States, where people rose up in arms against a dictatorial government. And so it's hard for me to justify, and I don't, killing people. but it is necessary to defend people. And at points when everything is maintained by a weapon, that's what you need to use. But a lot of organizing can be done to win things through elections, even when there are no elections. That's what we did in Chile. We organized people to vote when it was still only a dream that that would happen. And the dictator made a mistake under great pressure of creating what it was called a plebiscite, a yes/no vote once, whether or not to continue his government or to open it up. And we turned out people like you can't believe. And we won. And we've seen incredible changes just now in Peru. A left-wing people's government was elected. In Chile, just a few months ago, they recreated their whole constitution, the most progressive constitution in the world. So change takes different forms, but we need to be always organizing and learning how to best do it. Here, we vote. We also take direct action to stop the people who were planning on carrying out a fascist activity yesterday. There was direct action, I'm sure. But we vote when necessary, and we organize a lot to do that too. Tens of thousands. Last year, or in 2020, our little organization, we spoke with 45,000 voters. We have people who have been elected to office. So you have to do what is right for the people and with the people.
No. Okay. Thank you for your comment. How's this? Better. Okay. And two were expelled right away. I would say expelled.
I couldn't hear. I'm sorry. You want to come up and just ask me? Yeah, when I went to Peru, we had been prepared for a year to arrive and speak Spanish. No English allowed. We were in a community where speaking English was just incorrect. And unfortunately, two people insisted in speaking English. They got off the plane and they went up to the priest who they had been trained to meet and said, "Hi, Father." And then they continued. And they met with them and counseled them for a while, but then they sent them back. Yeah. Some people don't, it's hard to make a decision to change. And some people, as we know in our country today, some people don't want to change. You're welcome.
One question. Yeah. One question that I had is that so much in the area you were at, but in Brazil, there's currently a problem, at least from where I sit. You know, when you're in a Unitarian church, you're going to see different faith walks. Included is the fact that I happen to be on the pantheist side of the street. In Brazil, the way things are moving these days, some of the there's some real pressure coming from the Christian community to the people who are you know, native and are here in Denver. From just as interested in liberty as you are, but they happen to be non-Christian, having the lens so that when you fight for freedom, you don't say the first person or go after you're secure.
Yeah, well, Brazil is under a government that is illegitimate and very much shares an ideology that was promoted here by Trump. The president has led that country into deep, deep misery. You know, there's a definitely, not only in Brazil, but all around the world, even here in the United States, people sometimes don't recognize there are communities that predate Christianity and Western colonialism, and they have deep values, but they are under so much pressure. Their lands have been taken away and spoiled. Their way of life is almost impossible. My wife is one of those people. She really is. She's believes in many things and works with people who have a pre-Christian understanding of the world. We don't empower them. I don't believe in empowerment. People take power. They're never given power. That's a good point. One of the most important principles of community organizing. Power is taken, not given. We can't, with all the good intentions that we have, give people power. So those communities, traditional communities in Brazil and around the world and here in the United States, all across the United States, have managed to hold on in one way or another to their identity and to their community. And I'm confident that they will outlive capitalist, patrimonial, patriarchal society.
Good point. The same thing you said about defending earlier, that you can defend someone, that it still holds
Yes.
true in this case as well.
You can reach out your hand and learn about people and work with them under their leadership. You can be an ally. You can learn to change. You like I said, I'm always going to be in this body, but my understanding of the world is totally different. You can change and become a very powerful ally with others. And that we need to do that here in the streets of Riverside with the many homeless, with LGBTQ community, with the African-American community that suffers from a constant structural systemic racism. We have to do that here, so we can.
So you said that power is never given. Do we give power when we vote?
I think when we vote, we take power. We take what is ours. We are all powerful people, but many of us are excluded. And what we're seeing in the country today are massive attempts to exclude people from voting, to take away their power. When you step up and vote, you're taking power. It's momentary. It's not everything we need, but it is the power. So yeah, they're taking it. What we can do as organizers, we educate people. Francisco does this all, we educate people about voting. We help organize opportunities for people to get registered to vote, to learn about who represents them and who doesn't. We can do all of that, but it's the person's decision to vote and for whom and how. That's when they take power. And then when they can exercise that power to become part of a political party, to run for office, to go out and register other people, to take direct action, and they can grow their power. They can become very powerful through organizing with others and working with others. And that's what an election is. So it's not just your vote, it's you're joining a group of people who have certain values and express them and say, we want this, we want this. We think it's best represented now, maybe not perfectly, by this candidate. We want to stop this other candidate. And so they exercise their vote, and that's power.
Is there anyone else? Any other questions for Dr. Dolan? Martha?
Good question.
I'm glad to come back whenever you would have me. I'm often here, much less with COVID. I haven't been here. We closed our office and now we're opening a new one here in Riverside. But let me know. Yeah.
So I will close this service today with a quote, "With dreams come responsibility." Thank you again, Dr. Dolan, for all your insight.